So I would like to start this video by saying and offering my condolences to all of the victims of Hurricane Katrina. I'm offering my condolences to the families. And I want to say thank you to all of the volunteers, emergency workers, and neighborly Samaritans who helped the city of New Orleans and other cities in the path of Hurricane Katrina. So I want to say thank you to all of y'all as well. I heard some talk about Katrina a few weeks back, actually, maybe within the last 2 months. And I purposely avoided watching anything about it because it's a very traumatic moment in my life, personally. And I know that a lot of my fellow New Orleanians and the community has never been the same. And in some cases, it has never rebounded. But I don't have a planned script at all, but I'll just speak like I always speak. So I'll go back in time and explain a little bit about the city of New Orleans and hurricanes. So there have been, my whole life, I'm 43 years old, born in 1981. We have had plenty of hurricanes to come to the state of Louisiana, the city of New Orleans. And we've also had plenty of hurricanes that were gonna destroy New Orleans, but they fizzled out or they turned and they went to Florida or other places, Mississippi, Texas. So the people in New Orleans, a lot of the culture in New Orleans, we're not really affected by hurricanes. Like, we don't let it rattle us as a people. And so when there was a hurricane coming, most people, they acknowledge it, they assess the situation, and they make a decision about evacuating or riding it out. Riding it out just basically means we're gonna stay put, shelter in place, and we'll deal with the power loss, we'll deal with the utilities disrupted, we'll deal with whatever comes after the storm passes. And so in the city of New Orleans, there is a lot of the culture that is used to riding out the storm. Bourbon Street never closed, for example. There were bars and restaurants that never closed. And so I do want to take this moment to just say that most people understand how culture works. Culture explains why we do what we do. And to other people that are not a part of that culture, it may make no sense. And it may even seem like you're being negligent or reckless. And that's totally understandable. So when you come from a place where there is a history of hurricanes, where there's a history of hurricanes turning at the last minute, where there's a history of riding out hurricanes, or hurricanes downgrading to tropical storms, and then you have a history of low-income folks, it's not necessarily cost feasible to evacuate 3-4 times a season. Like, where are you gonna go? If everybody you know lives in the city of New Orleans, where are you gonna go? Where are you gonna evacuate to? Also, New Orleans has an amazing public transit system. If you don't own a car, what are you gonna do? Now, I do want to preface what I say from this point by, I do want to preface what I say after this by saying this. it's easy to look at something from hindsight and say everything that should have been done or could have been done. But Hurricane Katrina was an eye-opener for any place that lives in a hurricane bullseye. Now, I'll just parallel it by talking about Superstorm Sandy. When Superstorm Sandy went down the Atlantic on the East Coast and wreaked havoc, whether you lived in a hurricane-prone area or not, your municipality, your city, your community, your first responders, they learned from that. They learned from that. So I'm not gonna for 1 second blame anything about Hurricane Katrina on Governor Kathleen Babineau Blanco. I'm not gonna blame anything on Mayor C. Ray Nagin or Ray C. Nagin. I'm not gonna blame anything on him. I'm not gonna blame anything on anybody who was in administration or oversight or leadership, because none of those persons caused Hurricane Katrina. None of those persons had experience dealing with a catastrophe as Hurricane Katrina and the aftermath. So unfortunately, for the people that want to blame people, that's not fair. That's not fair. Those folks didn't have on-the-job experience with dealing with a disaster such as Hurricane Katrina. They didn't. You know, they didn't. We riding in the city of New Orleans right now. They didn't have anything to do with causing the storm. Did they learn from it? I'm sure they did. Did they have regrets? I'm sure they did. Did they have sleepless nights? I'm sure they did. And I'm gonna leave it at that. But I will say this. Hurricane Katrina, it really ruined my life. I have the gift of life. Some people don't have that no more. There was a lot of people that passed away, you know, through their own negligence or through just the situation, the hand that they were dealt. So I'm not gonna say that you can't rebound. But what I am gonna say is, whenever you deal with trauma, whenever you deal with tragedy, it takes time. It takes time. And so if you're not one of those people who are empathetic of others, I think it's a perfect example of remaining silent when you hear, I think it's a perfect example of remaining silent when you hear stories about Hurricane Katrina. So I do want to say again that this is just my experience. I don't have anything scripted. I'm just talking from my heart to you. I appreciate you listening. So I remember Friday, I made a few preparations to ride the storm out. So I had about 5 gallons, a few 5-gallon jugs of water, and I had 50 pounds of rice. And I was married, and I had a 1-year-old daughter. So I was flat broke, to be honest. I was flat broke. And I was just gonna ride the storm out, you know? I had a few shotgun shells. I had a few fishing hooks. I know how to get food, you know? So I felt because I didn't have the means to evacuate, that I would just ride the storm out. So I made preparations to just ride the storm out. My dad, he called a family meeting. So my dad said, look, I know where we could go as a family, because it was 12 of us. He said, I know where we could go. So at the family meeting, I said, look, Pops, whatever you want to do, let's do it. Let's do it. So my dad's family, my dad's family, they bought a piece of property in the sticks out in Mississippi. So he said, look, I could call my dad and see if we could come out there. So he called my papa up, and my papa said, yeah, y'all come on. So Saturday morning, we left our house. My dad said, look, just bring three changes of clothes, 3 pair of underwear. We'll be back in no time, So I was like, all right. But I brought all of my camping gear. I bought all of my camping gear. And we ended up on the property. When we got to the property, it was 26 of us in this very small 3-bedroom house. This house was less than 700 square feet. It was 26 of us there. And it felt good to be with the family, I got to see some great uncles and great aunts. Got to see my papa. My mama was already deceased. And one of my uncles was already deceased. But I got to see, the family. And it felt good. It felt good to be together. So we're in this little house, and it's the calm before the storm, It's a beautiful, hot day. And where we were in Mississippi, we were not in a flood-prone area, but we were going to get the very best that Hurricane Katrina offered. My only concern was tidal surge and the levees breaching. That was my only concern. But now in Mississippi, I had no concern about that. My concern shifted to tornadoes. That's it. So the next day, that Sunday when Katrina came, the house, like I said, it was small. So what we did, we let all of the elderly ones stay in the house, and we hung out in the shed attached to the house. And I had all my camping gear, so I was okay, but inside the shed is bigger than the house. But inside the shed, we just basically, we heard the rain come, we heard the wind howl. You felt the power of this massive storm. And then you felt the bands come. And so they had this little part of the roof on the shed where the wind was just banging it. Bang, bang. And it started to lift. And so I told my brothers, I told my dad, I said, look, Pop, if we don't get up there and hammer that metal down, we're going to lose the whole roof. And we're in here. And so my grandfather was in his 70s at that point. And I grabbed a nail bag and a hammer, and they footed the ladder for me. I crawled up there, and I nailed the metal down with these metal nails with a rubber washer. And so I nailed down the pieces that were coming up during a storm. And I'll tell you this, if you ever been duck hunting and you get peppered with a 12-gauge shotgun, that's what it felt like. It felt like a 12-gauge shotgun peppering me with the rain, because the wind was blowing so hard. It was like sandblasting me. The rain was. So I got it nailed down, got off the roof safely. I grabbed the ladder, and as I'm running with the ladder through the grass to get back on the other side into the shed, the wind was pushing me with the ladder. And so, soaking wet, got into the shed, changed clothes to dry, and it was one of the most intense situations I've ever been in, because we didn't know what was going to happen next. And I kept looking at that edge of the roof, and you saw daylight, and I'm like, man, we're going to lose the roof, So the storm just battered. It felt like for days, really. but it wasn't for days, but it felt like for days. And so we lost power. We didn't lose power. You know, it comes back on like that. And finally, when the storm was over, you know, we was just thankful to be alive, all 26 of us. And the only way to describe what it looked like was the Wizard of Oz with Dorothy and the tornado. That's what it looked like outside, looking at the sky from inside the shed. It was very ugly, very ugly. So where we were at in Mississippi, we got the full brunt of Hurricane Katrina, even though we were some 80 miles from the coast of Louisiana, where we were. We were inland, but we had all of the wind, we had all of the rain, we had all of the lightning, the thunder, the tornadoes. We had everything that Hurricane Katrina dumped except flood. So now, in the aftermath of the storm, we're doing just a par check. So we survey the land. We have trees down. We cut trees for over 2 weeks, blocking the roads, blocking everything. It was just unsafe to be outside, you know? And so we were basically free labor for the county to clear the area where we were residing. And then that's when all of the news reports, John Lemon, Anderson Cooper, I think all those boys was, you know, reporting. Don't quote me, it's been a while. And I tried my best not to watch the news. But it was so traumatic seeing your city underwater. And where we going right now, this is where my grandfather used to live. And after Hurricane Katrina, we you know, I'll tell you about that. But so it was so hard seeing your city underwater. But you know what was harder than seeing your city underwater? Seeing all of the people at the convention center that had no help. They were hopeless. They were afraid. They were in despair. Then you're listening to the radio and they calling us refugees when we natives of America. We New Orleanians. And they calling us refugees. Knowing that my city would never be the same, knowing that the lives of so many folks was over, they were deceased. That was very traumatic. Then you listen to the 911 calls of some of the people down in Chalmette in the parish, and they crying for help because they in the attic and they have no way of getting out the attic. And the little kids and the grown men that's in tears knowing they're in their own coffin at a place where they were able to love each other and have memories. This house right here on the corner. This was my papa's house. My mama, you know, this was the house right here. So many memories right there, you know? And when Hurricane Katrina was over with, we got vaccinated and we came to the city, and it was a mess. It was a mess. Riding through the city on this very street, their car slipped over. Car slipped over. The street looked like a disaster. They had cars flipped over. They had everything was just a shell. All of these houses were just a shell. And they had all the exits from all of the first responders searching. And then we pulled up right here on Virgilian Street. And I got on the roof of this house right there. I got on the roof. I knocked the whirlybird off the roof. And I went into, hang on one second. Somebody said audio bad. Give me a second. I got a waterproof case on my phone. So that might be, I don't know. Can you hear it better now? What's up, Dr. T? Hey, Grandma. So I got on the roof of this house right here. And I knocked the whirlybird down. And I went into the attic. And I needed to find the scuttle hole from inside the attic. I had never been in that attic. No electricity. None of that, you know? So this neighborhood I'm in right here, 10 foot of water. 10 foot of water in this neighborhood. And my grandfather's house, I went in the attic. I found a scuttle hole. And this the house right there. And once I found a scuttle hole, I went into the house and I lost it. I lost it. I lost it. I lost it. Every memory I had in that house was gone. All of the pictures, all of the memories of the family, gone. Gone. Everything had thick mold on it. I'm talking about it looked like a rainforest of mold and mud. It was all gone. And I remember punching the wall. I remember punching the wall with everything. I think I broke my hand. But I hit the wall so hard. And if you ever punch through walls, you know one day you're going to hit a stud. But I punched the wall and it immediately helped me to snap out of it. And my dad, my papa, they all on the outside the house and they hear me just bawling like I'm at a funeral, you know? And they're like, what's the matter? What's the matter? And I just couldn't talk. Couldn't talk. Because every memory in that house was gone. And you know, all the pictures, I think that's the one thing everybody valued who lost anything of material value. My aunt lived right here in this house right here. She had 10 foot of water too. So we gutted both of the houses. We gutted my papa's house and we gutted my auntie's house. And I remember the ceiling fan. That was the first time I ever saw this in my life. But a ceiling fan is horizontal, the blades. Every ceiling fan in the city of New Orleans that had that water in a house like that, they all would droop down. They all would droop down. I remember we had to get the refrigerator out the house. And so my big brother, I don't know why, but it's just habit to open it up, you know? So he opened up the refrigerator and the smell of the refrigerator instantly gagged him. Instantly. And I remember when I opened up the freezer, they had a Sanderson Farm whole chicken in that little clear bag. And it was nothing but juice. It was pink juice because the chicken had decomposed inside of the little bag. And I saw that and it just messed me up, you know. And driving this whole neighborhood, just this neighborhood, that's not all of them, just this neighborhood, all you saw was mud everywhere. And the mud had cracked because all of the moisture had dried out of the mud. And it was so hot, they didn't have a bird in the sky nowhere. You didn't see no birds flying. You saw no life. To drive down the interstate and then not have any lights on it was very eerie. I had never experienced anything like that before. And that was not even ground zero. That was not the lower 9. That was not the parish, Chalmette. We almost in the city right here. And so to see those things, it changes you. It changes you. You don't know how much you love something till you lose it. And that's when you realize how much you loved it and how much you took it for granted. That's when you realize that. And then it's like a lot of my family was displaced. And guess what? We didn't have iPhones back then. The whole cellular grid was down. You had email if you had electricity. We didn't have the ability to communicate. And that was a challenge for a lot of folks because you didn't know how nobody was doing. Then you heard all of the stories. I remember Mayor Ray C. Nagin, I don't remember how his name is, but anyway, I remember Mayor Nagin asking for like 25,000 body bags, you know? And I remember telling my people, it was 26 of us in that little house. I said, look, man, y'all got to stop watching this news, man. I was ready to go fly away. It was just too much. And they watched the news and they watched the news and it looped and it looped and it looped and it looped. And all they saw was the city underwater. And their hearts were broken. They lost everything. They lost everything. I didn't lose everything. I still had my life. I had my immediate family. I didn't lose everything. I lost memories. I lost things that can't be replaced like that. I didn't lose any family members in the storm. So I had a lot to be thankful for. But what I lost was because of the storm. And I also lost because other people lost. My little cousin, he lived in the 9th Ward. And when the levees were blown up and that water breached, he was in a mad dash to get out. He made it. And he even helped rescue other people to get them to safety. And I'm proud of him for that. I'm proud of him for that. And they had so many men and women, grandmas, titties, uncles. They had so many men and women that helped their fellow man. And that rarely gets talked about. You have victims of Katrina that helped other victims of Katrina. People want to talk about the looting and all that other stuff. You could talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the neighborly Samaritans that helped their community. All of this was underwater right here. We by the lakefront. We right by Dalman Road. And there was a lot of folks that did the right thing towards their neighbor. Now at the convention center, I was not there. All I saw was news, stories, and clippings. But I know 2 people personally that were there. And they said it was not pretty. The things that was going on, the essays that was going on, the violence that was going on, it was not a nice place to be. And all I could think about was when there's no hope, it's easy to become an animal when there's no hope. When there's nobody that's there to help, it's easy to destroy stuff. This is something I learned being a first responder for 13 years. Everybody deals with trauma different. Everybody deals with trauma different. And trauma affects us all different. Some people are able to be calm and some people are not. Some people are able to think clearly and make great decisions. Some people are not. So trauma affects us all differently. And I'm not going to make an excuse for anybody that did anything that was wrong during the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm not here to condemn nobody for that. But what I will say is this: that experience of being hopeless is enough to drive anybody mad who's a good person, who makes good decisions. When you can't get food and water, it could become very tempting to take food and water. And some people went mad because of what they experienced. My cousin told me walking through the water with bodies floating around you, it was a very hard experience. It was a very hard experience. Most of us never got counseling after Katrina. We never got it. Some of my trauma from Katrina is because of how Katrina impacted my family. And I don't want to sound selfish. I do not want to sound selfish. But my family had considerable loss during Katrina. Thankfully, none of us lost our life because we had an option. We hooked up with other family and we evacuated together. I was flat broke. If it wouldn't have been for my dad, I would have rode the storm out with my wife of 4 years and my daughter of 1 year. My infant newborn daughter. And if we needed food, I would have went and got food. Like I said, I had fishing hooks, fishing line, I had my shotgun, I had everything I needed to provide basic necessities. I did have a cashier of water and some rice. So we would have been okay until things got sorted out. I will say this: where we were at, the Red Cross came through and they delivered meals and MREs. I think they gave me $700. That $700 helped a lot. One time when I came to the city, right after Katrina, within the next few months when we could come back, my truck broke down on me. And when my truck broke down, I wish I could meet this dude today. There was a young white guy. He had to be in his 20s. And my truck broke down on 55 North. And this guy stopped. He put me and my wife and my newborn in his truck. He was on his way to an MRI appointment. I didn't even know what an MRI was. But he tore something in his knee or in his leg, and he was going to have an MRI. And this man, he brought us to AutoZone in Reserve. We got back from AutoZone. I changed the part that was broke on my truck, and something else was wrong. He brought me back to AutoZone. Me, my wife, and my daughter. Brought us back to where my truck was on 55 North, around Hammond. And I wish I knew who he was. I'm indebted to him. He was an angel in my time of distress. He put me and my family before himself, before what he needed for his health. You know he had to wait a while to get that MRI appointment. But he didn't think about himself. He thought about his fellow man. And I would love to see him again. I couldn't pick him out of a lineup to this day. I couldn't. But I would love to see him again. And I hope he has prospered thoroughly in life for his act of love to me and my family. All of this was underwater. All of this was underwater. No lights in the city. And so eventually we came back to the city. Eventually, it took a little while. Eventually we came back. At the time I was living on the West Bank, and the West Bank had no water in the area I was living in. So I had a home to come back to. But a lot of my fellow natives did not. They had nowhere to go and nowhere to come back to. They were homeless. They were homeless. I remember seeing a few news clips and they had kids missing and split up, and they were trying to help people to find these kids and their parents. It was a horrible disaster that no one was prepared for or knew how to be prepared for. This wasn't Betsy and this wasn't Camille. This was a different monster. After Hurricane Katrina, 2 weeks later came Hurricane Rita. So all our friends in the Bayou region were impacted by that. But Rita didn't have the same tenacity that Katrina had. So my whole state, Southeast Louisiana, they got it. They got it. They got it. My father was personally affected by Hurricane Katrina. And I love him for his ability to persevere in the face of disaster and challenge and not give up and to thrive. My dad is my hero. My dad taught me how to be a man. My dad taught me how to make hard decisions. And I live every day. I live every day to just be a piece of the man he is. Just to be a piece. And I'm so proud of my dad for not giving up. I'm so proud of my dad for doing the hard stuff and taking it on the chin. What a man. What a man. Hurricane Katrina, it really did ruin my life. It really did. It really did. But I'm thankful it didn't take my life. I'm thankful for that. Now, just to briefly talk for just a second about evacuations. Everybody don't have the ability and the means to evacuate. That's just what it is. Let me show you this right quick. This used to be one of the best places to fish in New Orleans. Cause you see straight ahead, right on these legs right there. That was one of the best places to fish right there. And as you can see, the walkway that connected us to that leg is gone. And I wish the city could fix this back, because this was a community fishing spot. And A lot of people benefited from the recreation of fishing right here. And it's sad to see it still in disrepair. And also, Frank Davis Highway leads you to the old twin span. Please fix that as well, the fishing pier out there, so that we could do what we need to do as far as recreating out here in New Orleans. But everybody don't have the means to evacuate. Evacuating gets very expensive. And if you think about it from just a financial standpoint, it takes money, it takes time, it takes resources. Your bills still come. I don't know if y'all realize that. Like, when you evacuate and you spend $1,000 on evacuating, hotel room, food, gas, supplies you may need, and then the storm fizzles out or it becomes a tropical storm or it turns, you still spent that $1,000. And your mortgage company, they want their money. Your landlord, he wants his money. You don't get out of your financial responsibility because you evacuate. Now, some people are going to say, well, why do y'all live there? And that's a great question. Why do we live in the soup bowl? I was born here. People have lived in this soup bowl since before you were born, before I was born. For thousands of years, people have lived in this soup bowl. It wasn't called New Orleans. It didn't get that name till 1718. So this is our home. Where else are all of these people gonna go? Houston learned that. Other areas learned that. Where else all these people gonna go? And this still bothers me to this day. This still bothers me to this day. There were reports of Americans, New Orleanians, Louisianians who were refused passage on the elevated expressway on the West Bank. The city of Gretna, I was told, blocked people from passing, even threatened to shoot and kill if people came further. That is criminal. That is criminal. That is criminal. That is criminal. And those people, if that's true, they should be held accountable for that. That is criminal. And it's morally wrong. If that's true. If that's true. Nobody was prepared for Katrina. But because of Katrina, we're now prepared for other storms that will come. Katrina taught me a lot. I was in rural Mississippi, and for the first time in my life, you go to a gas station and you can't buy gas. The electricity don't work because it's off. Nobody has backup generators. None of these businesses have backup generators. Then you want a cold drink, soda pop, whatever you call it. Your debit card doesn't work. So all of that money you had in the bank, it's valueless. It's not even a number on a screen anymore because you can't access it. And that was the reality for thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. So Katrina taught me to be prepared. Katrina taught me to have basic necessities to acquire food and have basic necessities so that I'll have something to eat while trying to acquire food. But it still is a very serious problem, because to be prepared and to be a prepper, it takes money, it takes knowledge, and it also takes the proper understanding about what you're prepping. Because you can't eat a bullet. You cannot eat a bullet. Can't do that. I mean, how long is the water gonna stay fresh? The water that you prep, how long is it gonna stay fresh? So it's more to prepping than just buying stuff and forgetting you have it. So prepping is an active, conscious decision that you make in the attempt to have basic necessities if stuff hits the fan. And what I learned from Katrina is it's your responsibility to provide and protect your family. It's your responsibility. You can't depend on big pharma, big government, and nobody else. You can't. The people at the convention center that were forced to go there, they went to what they felt was an extraction point, a muster station, somewhere where they could get help, and nobody was there to help them. Out of everything, that is what I remember the most about Katrina, the convention center, the Superdome, where all of those folks were forced to slowly die because of lack of basic help and necessities. If you had a bag of rice, somebody might have took it from you at the convention center. If you had something and they wanted it, you might have lost your life because of that. So nobody was safe there. Nobody was safe. And that's forever etched in my mind. These people on this end, they flooded. Lakeshore, they flooded. They flooded. It's like, how do you repair your life after losing everything that you worked for, after losing loved ones? The city don't even look the same after Katrina. It don't even look the same. It changed. We lost something. We lost something as a result of Katrina. We lost something. And everybody in the city, some have moved on. But it's still common to see houses where people didn't rebuild. And if you go to the lower 9, you're gonna see a lot of green lots, because some people could not rebuild. The road home, it helped some people. It helped some people. I saw a clip, I guess it was from National Geographic, of my great aunt, and she ended up in Kansas, but she cried every day to come back to this city because this is her home. And we blessed still to have her on this earth. And she don't want to live no other place. I'll explain it this way. When you see a person who comes from a different country and they move to America, sometimes they'll still fly the flag of their home, their home country. They'll still fly the flag. Even though they live somewhere else, their home country is still where their heart is. And every New Orleanian, except one that I know of, felt the same way. They wanted to come back home. This is all they knew. They could drive in New Orleans with a blindfold on. This was home. Potholes or not, this was home. Corrupt politicians or not, this was home. corrupt police department or not, this is home. Because that's where their heart is. And that shouldn't be taken from them because of something they had no control over. They didn't have no control over the storm and the aftermath. So if you hear somebody who want to talk about Hurricane Katrina 95 years later, let them talk. Let them talk. Because it was a very traumatic experience. We didn't get therapy after Katrina. And then other people, I'll tell you this. This is my, I don't know how many days after Katrina, I remember seeing CNN. And I sat there in front of the TV with the most dumbfounded look on my face because my life as I knew it had stopped. My city was underwater. And all I saw was like the busy interstate in LA with all these cars on it. And the people walking in New York. And I'm thinking, dang, the world didn't went on without us. Like this the place everybody came to visit. This the place, top 5 food city. This the birthplace of jazz. This is where the home of the second line. This is the Big Easy. This is where all y'all come. And y'all just moved on without us. I felt helpless. I felt abandoned. I felt abandoned. I felt abandoned by America. And I think Mr. West said something with Mike Myers. He said, George Bush don't like black people. Don't know why he said it. I don't understand what the motive for saying it was. But I'm glad he said it. And I have nothing against Mr. Bush, President Bush, nothing at all. But when Mr. West said that, it reminded people that people were down here suffering. People were down here hurting. People needed help. And I'm not talking about money. They needed food. They needed water. They needed shelter. They needed protection from the elements, whether it was weather or criminal. And they weren't getting it. You think of going to your favorite coffee shop and the barista is taking a little bit too long and you got somewhere to be. What is your mentality and your attitude? You're not happy. Try being at the convention center or at the Superdome and ain't nobody there to help you. Ain't nobody there who swore to serve and protect, there to serve and protect. Because they're in a dang tailspin too. There were victims too. The good ones. The corrupt ones, forget them. But there were victims too. So, I'm still trying to get over it, to be honest with you. And I hate this time of year. Because I hate hearing about Katrina. I wish we could just move on from it. But you know what? We can't. Think about somebody that you lost in debt, that you loved. Every year, you remember them. Throughout the year, you remember them. You remember the day they died on. You remember how they died. It's traumatic. That same feeling that you have, every New Orleanian has it. The ones that were tragically traumatized by Katrina, they have it. And the ones that weren't as tragically traumatized, they still have it. They still have it. And very few people care. And I think that's all we really need as victims of one of the greatest natural disasters to ever hit this great country we live in. I saw a young lady talking. Her name is Creole Polyglot. And she was on TikTok. I think I saw her yesterday or the day before. And I listened to her whole video. And I ain't gonna lie. That was the best therapy I got. That was the best therapy I got. Everybody want to call. But that was the best therapy I got because she cares. She cares. And she reminded other people why they should care. But you know how the old saying go, people don't care till it happened to them. And that's true. That's true. But if you're one of those people that don't care, when it does happen to you, reach out to me, because I'll listen. I'll give you a hug, and I'll give you some therapy. I'll do that. That's my promise to you. And I wish what's best for you as well. Katrina was so significant. I really want y'all to understand this. Katrina was so significant that if that day never happened, history would have changed. History would have changed. Because for so many people, their life instantly changed forever. That's how significant Katrina was. Katrina, for the city of New Orleans, was September 11th, 2001, for the country that we live in. That's the significance. That's the comparison. For 9/11, what we said, never forget, right? We said that, never forget. Katrina was New Orleans 9/11. And just like, I don't even want to say this because it could be misinterpreted, but ain't nobody in New Orleans gonna tell this country or anybody in this country to get over it, to move on. It ain't that bad. You didn't lose nothing. They're not gonna do that. That would be so insensitive and belligerent. So the city has never rebounded from Katrina. Never. And I don't think it ever will rebound. I don't think it can rebound. I really don't. The people in New Orleans, they're resilient. Good people in New Orleans. Despite what the TV showed y'all. Before the internet really took off, you remember those Black Friday videos? They fighting over stuff they ain't need. But when you need water, you know what? When your daughter or your son or your baby needs water or milk or food, I've never been that desperate. I've never been that desperate. But they had a lot of people who were. And I can't I can't comment on that. I can't. Wrong is wrong, right is right. We all know that. If you stole a color TV, you know that was wrong. You know that was wrong. You know that was wrong. And I'm not going to waste your time talking about that. See right here at this corner right there? I'm going to go over this bridge right there. This the Danziger Bridge. This is, I think it was 15 people, don't quote me. But this is where they had this big old shootout. Law enforcement with alleged bad people. And then they had the big cover up. This is the Danziger Bridge right there. So I'm gonna turn around at the light and I'm gonna go back over it. But every time I ride over this bridge, I think about all those people who lost their life. I think about the cover up, to conceal it, to hide it, to minimize it. So if law enforcement lost their character because of the trauma, what you expect Tyrone to do? What you expect Mike to do? Skin in behalf of skin, right? So it was traumatic for everybody. And I'm very thankful I had the ability to leave the city. I had the resources, even though I was flat broke, to leave the city. I did volunteer work after Katrina because I wasn't as disenfranchised as some. I wanted to give back. I wanted to help my community to rebound. I wanted to do my part. So many memories over here. So many memories. Said it'll never be the same. It can't be the same. Because the people is what made New Orleans great. The people is what made New Orleans great. The people. If you went to the most fanciest hotel in the city of New Orleans, Ritz-Carlton, Hotel Intercontinental, Le Pavillon Hotel, that hotel is nothing without those people, without the doorman, without the concierge, without the cooks, the housekeepers. The hotel is nothing without that. So if you had a good time in New Orleans, it was because of the people. It was because of the bartender. It was because of the server. It was because of the bus boy. It was because of the bouncer. That's why you had a good time. It was because of the people. It was because of the people that you asked, hey, how do I get here? And they told you how to get there. It was because of the people that you asked, hey, where could I get a good? And they told you where you could get a good one. It's the people. And that's what made New Orleans great. The people. That's how New Orleans became the city that it was known all over the world to be. The people. And Katrina robbed us. It robbed us. Hypothetical. If there was an ability for us to see the future and everybody evacuated the city of New Orleans and no one died, the only thing that would have changed was some of the houses, a housing issue. But the people could have eventually came back. But we lost too many people. And too many people was in a bad situation. On the east bank of Jefferson Parish, too many people was in a bad situation. Down in Chalmette, St. Bernard Parish, people was in a bad situation. But nobody was prepared for it. And that's my honest opinion. It's easy to blame people. I can't blame nobody for being prepared for it, because nobody was. I wish things would have moved a little bit more expeditedly after, because the people who made those decisions, they were not dead. The people who made those decisions, they had a place to stay. The people that made those decisions, they had air conditioning, food, and water. But the people who were down here in the city suffering, they deserve more than that. As an American, they deserve more than that. As a New Orleanian, they deserve more than that. As a Louisianian, they deserve more than that. And they are the true victims in this whole situation. To all of the brave men and women that put their responsibilities in the right place, thank you. Y'all are heroes. Whether it worked out or whether it didn't work out, y'all were heroes. And definitely unsung. To all the corrupt folks out there who did corrupt things and messed over a lot of good people, I hope you repented. I really do. And I hope you're not living bad no more. But it was a very traumatic calamity that befell us. It really was. My daughter was 1 year old. Now she's 21. 21. The whole city changed. Everything changed. And some change is good. I had a really good friend. I called up at some point because I still had her phone number. Like I said, we ain't had iPhones back then. But I called up. Her name was Connie. And I was like, Connie, I'm so happy to hear your voice, you know? I said, how you doing? She said, I'm doing good. I said, where the heck you at? She said, Texas. I said, really? You in Texas? She said, yeah. I said, I'm glad you got out. I said, are you coming back? She said, I'm not coming back. She said, for the first time in my life, I don't have to worry about my sons. They could play in the backyard or the front yard. So Hurricane Katrina improved her lot in life, because now she had a front yard and a backyard for her two sons to play in. Katrina helped a lot of people. It helped a lot of people. It helped a lot of people. And I'm happy for those people. But just like I could be happy for those people, I could be empathetic and sorry for the people that it did not help. I definitely can. They got a lot of them. Got a lot of them. I really think it hurt more people than it helped. I really do. But I'm gonna show you the convention center since we're right here. I'm gonna go to the Superdome first, then I'll show you the convention center. Because we're right here by both of them. This Canal Street right there. And I think they had water on Canal Street from what some people said, you know. And like you had people that worked in these hotels, and some of them was at work when Katrina happened. And they know the glass breaking, the windows bursting and all, you know, traumatic. They ain't had to worry about flooding, but it wasn't no cakewalk for nobody that was here. It was not a cakewalk. But we're about to pull up by the Superdome. This City Hall coming up right past them trees. Yeah, so City Hall is right behind these oak trees. It's the building right over there. Yep, the gray building. Now we're about to pass by the Superdome. And this is where, if you look at any images, you'll see the roof. Whatever that membrane is that they have on the roof, you'll see it white and black from where it dislodged, I guess, unadhered. And that's the Superdome right on the left. That's where the Super Bowl was this past year. And every time I see this building right here, I see the roof missing. That's been for the last 20 years. It's traumatic, man. It's traumatic. And any victim of trauma, they would understand that. It's traumatic. Can we move on? Yes, we can. But moving on doesn't mean you can't acknowledge what happened. Moving on doesn't mean you can't talk about what happened. Moving on does not mean that it didn't happen. And no matter what kind of hurricane come ever again, they'll never be allowed to go in this building because of the damage that the building experienced in the aftermath of the greatest natural disaster ever to touch this great country. And when I go back towards the West Bank, I'll show you where the folks was on the elevated expressway at. Now we're gonna go past by the convention center, where all of these people were camped out, slowly just dying. No food, no water, no toilets, nothing. They were just left to fend for themselves. They were just left to fend for themselves. Some of y'all know what Skid Row is. Skid Row. You know? It wasn't Skid Row. It was 3 billion. It was the Hiroshima of Skid Row. It was the Nagasaki of Skid Row, where we're headed. Tell you just this little brief tidbit. Me and my daughter, sous chef, we were going to make beer battered Louisiana redfish. And I had to make this video to to tell my experience. I ain't telling y'all everything. I'm gonna just tell you that. I can't tell you everything. But I told you some of it. Some of my experience with the greatest natural disaster to ever befall this great country. So, but yeah, we're almost there. I'm gonna go this way because it'll be a little bit better. It'll be a little bit better to see. I just realized I should have stayed where I was at on Poitras. Sometimes stuff work out, but then it don't work out in reality. I should have stayed on Poitras though, but it'd be all right. And this is the world famous Canal Street. All right, let's see. So, what's interesting is me and my family, we don't really talk about Katrina. We don't really talk about it. And there was a post I saw on TikTok from a young lady, and she was saying how with the documentary that was made, it's really unfortunate because she would rather hear from actual people who lived it, who experienced it, not from this person who decides to tell the story. But I think you need both. Because the person that's going to make the documentary, they have the access and the funds to tell a version of the story. But to the person who lived it, they definitely need to tell the story. And it's okay to have 50,000 or 300,000 different stories. It's okay to have that. Because that only gives you, as the listener, the viewer, a better, more well-rounded view of it. Because my experience was different compared to a lot of people who were on this street stranded. My experience was different. And so my story, my experience should not overshadow or be the one size fits all for other people who experience the same disaster, the same trauma. I think there's power in talking about trauma. I think there's power in it. When you hold it in, you don't talk about it, I think it's always worse. Personally, it's my personal opinion. That's my personal opinion. But I think both need to tell it. We need the documentaries, but we also need the documentaries to be honest and raw and unapologetic and not biased. That is how news is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be biased. You're not supposed to have an agenda. You're not supposed to have a point of view. When you report facts, that's all you need to do, regardless of the light that it paints people in. And I think that that's where a lot of people don't like the documentaries. I didn't watch the documentary, and the reason I didn't watch it is too complicated to even talk about. But I have looked at a number of solo people who lived it, who have talked about it. So I am thankful for them speaking up, because there are a lot of people who have been affected by it. And this whole area was packed with people. Packed. So we're about, I'm gonna let that motorbike go, but we're about 30 seconds. So all of this area on the left-hand side that you see, this is right before the convention center. And you had thousands of people from the Superdome all the way to over here. All of this was inundated with people who were suffering, displaced, homeless, no medicine. And this is the start of the convention center from the north side of it. So this whole building, the sidewalks, everything was littered with humans, good and bad, desperate and not desperate. And what I mean by desperate is they lost hope. Nobody was there to help them. This whole building, inside and out.